is not here. The next presentation, antigenic and the biodegradable characteristic of the extracellular matrix from the pig dermis. And the presenter is Olga Makagonova.
Hello everyone. Antigenic and biodegradable characteristic of the extracellular matrices from the pig dermis. Given that many people suffer from the excessive skin damage, wound repair has drawn tremendous dose attention in research. Tissue engineering is an effective method for the developing skin substitutes and improving the healing process. Modern intelligent dressing are becoming more and more in demand among the various assistant dressing materials that promote healing are foreseen as dermal matrix as a skin substitute can efficiently accelerate healing by promoting cell immigration and proliferation. Their values consist not only in a protective barrier but also in a beneficial environment for the healing by compatibility of toxicity, structural, physical, chemical, immunological properties, good ability to absorb the fluids from the environment. The possibility of making therapeutic agent at minimal human environment which actively support the wound regeneration process. Extracellular matrix dressing derived from the porcine dermis are an example of the such innovative products that facilitate wound healing by providing a moist environment, in which cells can thrive while the wound can still breathe and cell dry and exudate. The successful application of the scaffold and tissue engineering depends on many characteristics such as the biocompatibility, biodegradability, or strength, mechanical and chemical properties, scaffold, architecture, and manufacturing technologies. Motivation. Why we chose arterial pig derma? Arterial pig derma matrix can serve as alternatives to the standard wound coverage in circumstances when standard therapies are not desirable. Skin substitutes are used to aid in wound closure, alleviate pain, and replace the function of the skin. Skin substitutes have important roles in the treatment of the deep dermal and full thickness wound and various etiologies. Treating wound with skin substitutes that date back to 1880 when Joseph Jamigi described an absorbent dressing. Biological skin substitutes act temporarily like a natural skin with the advantage of being relatively abundant and supply. These are not very expensive. The biological skin substitutes have a more intact and native extracellular matrix structure which may allow the construction of the multi-natural or new derm. They also show excellent revitalization characteristic due to the presence of the basement membrane. The most widely used biological substitute worldwide is cadaveric scan allograft, porcine skin xenograft, amnion, and cultured epithelial autografts. Xenografts from various animals have been tested and tried over the centuries. Porcine skin allograft is the widely used in xenograph, a modern practice of the barn wound care prior to grafting pig skin has been specially treated and contains only the dermis layer. Xenografts are mainly used for the coverage of the partial thickness barn. The first pictures show steps of the production of porcine xenografts. Arterial pig derma matrix has been used in treatment of full thickness skin injuries as an allogenic dermal substitute providing a stable wound-based human and animal studies. The second picture shows microscopic appearance of the full thickness wound on red dorsum implanted with acidular derm matrix. Materials and methods. By treating the tissue with 0.3% trypsin solution at 37 degree, we obtain with dermal epidermal separation of the grafts according to the protocol. Tissue utilization was performed by treating of the porcine dermis with 1% Triton X100 for sodium doxycholate and washing truly in PBS. Examination of the desfășura samples was performed by the histological examination with hemoxyline eosin samples very fixed and buffered formaldehyde solution for porcine. The spectrophotometric method, as shown in picture number 4, was applied for the denial quantification. Extracted denial was quantified in a spectrophoto microplate arena. Degradation was performed in vitro by following the white loss of the grafts on 0.1 mole PBS in acidic, neutral, and basic media. The freeze-dried scaffold was whited and immersed in a centrifuge of top and containing PBS. The pH of the buffer was 7.44 and 10, the exposure time being 1, 7, 14, 21, and 28 days under the incubator condition at the 37 degree. Comparatively, graft degradation was monitored in 0.01 mole PBS solution with pH 7.4 combined with collagenase from proceeding histolyticum 1090 per milliliter. The follow-up period being of the 1, 5, 8, 24 and 35 hours and 37 degree. The absorption of the water revealed the diffusion of the medium into the tissue being necessary for the absorption of the exudate from the wound and the cells carted in the extracellular matrix obtained essential nutrients 0.01 mole PBS pH 7.4 was used in the fluid absorption test. The time required to follow the dynamics of the weight of the samples was 1, 2, 4, 8, 12 hours at 24 hours at 25 degree. The interval of the graft, the interval of this graft is crucial for appraising the microenvironment. For size and connectivity can affect cell adhesion, nutrient exchange, metabolic waste removal, and skin regeneration. The morphological characteristics of acidular dermal scaffold were investigated using a Vega scanning electron microscopy. The dry samples were then cut and the cross section was put with 10 nanometers of the hour. Through the histological examination, we highlight the presence of a fewer number of the cells and the visceral dermis, as shown on picture 5. As a result, we managed to remove about 80.5% of the genetic material from the porcine dermal structures according to the spectrophotometric denial quantification. Respectively, 2.43 nanogram per microliter was determined in porcine dermis and compared to 17.43 nanogram per microliter in the intact cell. The picture number 5 shows the two segments of the tissularized skin. Picture A, papillary damage, shows collagen fibers without cells. The picture B, reticular damage, shows collagen fiber without cells also. The rate of the thermal graft degradation at the skin wound should match the rate of the wound regeneration. Thus, if the acellular scaffold degrades rapidly during the early stage of the wound regeneration, it will not provide a good barrier for the regeneration itself. It will eventually lead to the soft tissue expansion into the skin defect, which is not welcome for the organizational regeneration of the soft tissue. As shown in picture number 6, the degradation rate of the acellular derm scaffold in 0.01 mol ppb pH 7.4 combined with collagenase from prosthetic histolyticum was the fastest, reaching a degradation rate of the 91.3% during 35 hours, while the degradation volume of the acellular scaffold in 0.01 mol PBS solution with pH 4 and 10 without enzymes represented 79.8% and 74% of the total sample from the 21st to the 28th day, and then the degradation tended to be slow, as shown in the picture number 6b. In 0.01 mol PBS solution with pH 7.4, the degradation reached 90.3% on the 28th day. The microscopic picture 2C shows the degrees volume and significant rupture of the graft starting from the 1st to the 28th day. The picture 6A shows degradation rate of the acellular derm scaffold. Degraded acellular dermal scaffolds represent a statistical significant values compared to the non-degraded part. Picture B shows degradation behavior of the acellular derms in the presence of the collagenase. Picture C shows distribution of the acellular scaffolds depending on the duration of the exposure at the pH of the PBS chosen for the study. In the absorption test, we obtained a variable depending on the exposure type. Specifically to the soft samples reached 350 milligram at the 4th hour at the emission of the liquid, the initial mass being 87.9 milligram. As shown in picture 7, the rate of the water absorption in the acellular dermal sample was significant. Even the first hour of the exposure, it exceeded the initial mass of the dry scaffold by 222.7%, while the absorption rate reached 307.1% of the total sample after 8 hours. And 305.7% after 12 hours, and then the absorption rate tended to be stable. During the degradation of the graft, we record microscopically the denaturation of the cells and the decrease of the mechanical resistance until the subtotal degradation of the tissue on the 28th day. This fact regarded us to follow the disorganization of tissue ultrastructure at scanning electron microscopy. Degradation of the tissue in PBS 0.01 mol, pH 7.4 with collagenase led to the rupture of their pore walls starting from the first hour, as shown in picture 8b, resulting in auto resorption of the grafts until the 35 hours, as shown in picture 8e. The picture 8 shows image of the porcine dermis following the degradation of acellular scaffold depending on the duration of exposure and days. Picture A shows the pores of the non-degraded porcine dermis. The picture B shows the pores of the degraded porcelain derms at 1 hour. The picture C shows the pore size at 5 hours. The picture D shows the pore size of the 8 hours, and the picture E at 24 hours, and picture F shows the pore size at 35 hours. Conclusions. The samples are disorganizing, resulting in a significant reduction in weight, as shown in the picture number 8B2F. Triton SDS digitalization and degradation removed cells and resorbed tissue, resulting in a honeycomb appearance of extracellular matrix, as shown in picture 8B2F, and preservation of the dermal structure, as shown in picture number 8A, which is a landmark for the tissue digitalization and degradation. Obtaining intelligent biological grafts for the skin wound regeneration is one of the research directions of the modern tissue engineering and represents an attractive segment of the regenerative medicine. Axanogenic material is easy to obtain in the commercial quantities which would cover the needs for clinical application. Scaffold obtained from the deserialized porcine dermis have great potential as source of bioactive molecules due to the appropriate pore size, immunologic inertness, hydrophilic properties, and biodegradability. It is necessary to carry out further studies regarding cross-linking, residualization, and cytocompatibility of the grafts. This work was supported by the STAT program on based nano-architectures and three-dimensional arrays of the biological methods for application in microfluidics and tissue engineering, and the Young Research Project, the development of the biological dressing for the regeneration of the skin wounds through the tissue engineering.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The paper is open for questions. I have a question. I have seen in your conclusion parts that you are thinking to cross-link your materials because you are not very satisfied for the degradation of the materials. What kind of cross-linking you are thinking to use?
The method cross-linking?
Yes.
By riboflavin and
alone, or
Alone
you
with
will
the-
use UV because riboflavin is a cross-linker which is very sensitive to UV radiation. Probably a combination of these two kind of cross-linking will be useful for you.
I will study the methods of the cross-linking.
Thank you. Other question? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation. The next presentation is effectiveness of tissue engineering in obtaining the extracellular composites vascularized bone matrix. And the presenter is Alina Stoyan.
Thank you for introducing me. Good morning to everyone. My name is Alina Stoyan. I'm plastic surgeon, research, and actually the part of the team representing State University of Medicine and Farmacie Nicolae Testemițanu. The topic I would like to speak today is about the effectiveness of tissue engineering in obtaining of the extracellular composite vascularized bone matrix experimental study. So, how we all know, tissue engineering is a promising medical branch with amazing evolution in the last years through the using of nanotechnologies, 3D bioprinting technologies, multiple cell types, and of course using extracellular composite bone matrix. Tissue engineering has the goal to creating a perfect allograft for allotransplantation. So, like a plastic surgeon, okay, I will start with the objective of our study, of our presentation, is based on a large animal model. It's actually based on the noble intention to solve the massive bone defects, which is one of the basic problems in the reconstructive surgeon. How we are trying to solve this problem, we try to use the all knowledge what we will be able to, or was able to find in tissue engineering, and to our intention to solve this problem of large bone defects. So what is actually the massive bone defects? Main is some sources like a critical bone defects represent one of the basic causes of functional disability. The gold standard, what is in our day is autollografts, is a perfect combination of mineralized extracellular bone matrix, bone marrow, and of course osteogenic cells. However, the available amount of such biological materials is limited, and the bone large defects remain really challenges. We are going to present the following: a new approach to the existing method of decellularization used in obtaining of bone matrix in order to decellularize composite vascularized bone matrix. So, when we start our study in 2017, we drew two aims. One aim was for this period specific for now, for this period of time, was initiation of the study in allotransplantation without immunosuppression for clinical application. And aim number two is for future, is treatment of large bone defects, including infected ones, in a short period of time with minimal negative outcome. So, trying to understand how it works, all this stuff with decellularization, recellularization, and everything, we did our study step by step. First step was to understand exactly if we can use the same protocol for hard tissue, for bone, and for soft tissue for vessels. Because following the literature, we found everywhere like protocols for hard tissue, for bone is too damaged for vessel, and vice versa. So we took one protocol from the literature, what was described back for decellularization of the non-vascularized bone, and we tried this protocol on vessels, different diameters. We start with large diameters vessel, we use first on carotid artery, and we continue with the superficial femoral artery, what is considered to be medium diameter size, and caudal tibial vessels, what is considered to be small diameter vessels. All study was done on biological material collected from the pig. For anatomical dissection, we use like a quite one protocol, anatomical protocol, the same described in the literature. So we test this protocol. We make a little bit, we change a little bit. In the final, we get a 9 steps protocol, who in general took around 1 week. So we did a really hard work to understand exactly if this protocol is good enough for bone, for specific spongy bone, for cortical bone, for all type of diameters vessels. We did a lot of histological examination. The basic histological examination, what we did was H&D staining, DAPI staining, DNA quantification. We did biocompatibility test using HUVEC cells for vessels and stem cells from bone marrow for bone graft. So the conclusion what we got to this stage was actually we can use the same protocol for hard tissue and for soft tissue. Okay, we continue our study with the next step, and the next step was if question. It was just to find the answer to the question if this protocol would be good enough for the big, large allografts. We took tibial bone from the pig, one segment of the medial diaphyseal part around 5 centimeters length. We preserve the vascularization. So how you can see, and it's why we call this graft a composite graft, because we have like a spongy bone, we have a cortical bone, we have the periosteum, and we have the vessels. Yeah, we have this good connection, this good vascularization of the pedicle. We try to keep the pedicle as long as we was able. So we start with preparation, anatomical preparation through the popliteal artery. So we repeat one more time the same protocol, 9 steps, 1 week, and we choose to be sure what exactly method of perfusion will be the better, we choose two methods. First graft we decellularized, or first lot of the grafts we decellularized using the perfusion of the solution through the popliteal artery, and the second one we use the same protocol doing the decellularization through the diaphyseal bone. So we took one segment for the scanning electron microscopy, another one for DNA quantification to understand exactly if this protocol is work. So this is what we get in the scanning electron microscopy in the cortical part. So how you can see in this upper line we have native bones, and lower line we have processed bones. It was expected to not have so many changes because the cortical bones is really strong and strong structure. So we have a little bit another images in the spongy bone. We have here like a native one, and in this line the processed one. So we can see like little changes of the structure in the spongy bone. In DNA quantification, the first graph just where we did the decellularization through the popliteal artery, we have a really good result, 91 degrees of DNA quantification in spongy bone. I don't know why, but we get practically the same result with increase of the amount of the DNA in the cortical bone. The same good result in the second graft where we did the decellularization through the cortical bones, through the diaphyseal part. The same histological examination of the vascular pedicles, so we see no cells after the decellularization. Another part of the vessels, no cells after the decellularization. This is the periosteum. We took one to be sure we don't have even the cells in the periosteum the same. You can see in the upper line the native periosteum, and the lower line no cells in the processed periosteum. Bone, again, we can see the cells in the native bones and no cells in the processed bones. So the most big problem, it's not actually the big problem, but the most important step for us was to see if we will be able to grow cells inside of this decellularized graft. What we did, we repeat one more time the process to another graft. We put in the medium for the 4 days our graft what we used for the replacement or for biocompatibility test. So we took stem cells from the bone marrow. So we labeled them with pKh 26 to be able to see them. And so this is the labeled cells. We put these cells on the surface. I'm not sure if, okay, here in the computer is see. So this is day 1, how is growing our cells on this type of scaffold of day 1. We have not so much, but we have a little bit of a few cells. So this is what is happening in day 4. Actually, starting with day 4, the number of the cells start to decrease. And this is the same to the name 4. What we observe in day 4, because we put just the cells on the surface, at day 4 we was able to see some cells inside of the bone. So for us it was really like a light in the tunnel, because we can like use this type of protocol to preparing our graft maybe for in vivo study. So this is the same at day 4 in bone matrix. So we was able to find some cells in acellular vascular matrix. The same at day 5 and day 6. And to the day 7, unfortunately, we wasn't able to see some cells even in the vascular matrix. So like a conclusion, so based on the previous result and the presentation above, we are constantly sure what utilization of the universal protocol for hard and soft tissue is possible. So in the case of allogenic bone graft, preserving the vascularization give us the opportunity to preserve the vascularization properly of the graft. In this way, maybe it will be easier for recellularization of the graft after the transplantation. So thank you for your attention. If you have any question, I will be happy to.
Thank you for your presentation. So the paper is open for questions. I have two questions. One is about mechanical properties. Did you do some mechanical evaluation of your decellularized graft?
Yeah,
or you intend to
I
do?
didn't put in the presentation. We have some mechanical examination of the vessels. It's not so many changes after the decellularized vessels. In the bone, my colleagues who unfortunately is not able to come today has some studies. She didn't put in the presentation, but we have some studies, especially when we did this in vivo experiment with the osteosynthesis, and we have some, but it's not really clear with what type of result we can come to the audience. So this is why we didn't put in the presentation. But we have, yes.
Thank you. And another one question is about the second process to put again the cells inside of your scaffold. How you maintain the biological, the physiological conditions?
We just put in tried to have this to give to the graft the same temperature like in our body, 10 to 37 degree, and to make in the medium, specific medium, cellular medium, and this medium was changed like once in 72 or 24 hours. It's dependent.
And you use an incubator?
Yeah,
or
of course.
Thank you. Other questions, maybe? If not, thank you again for your presentation.
If you don't mind, I will continue with presentation of
Yes.
my colleagues, Elena, who wasn't able to come today, but she asked me to just in a few words maybe to present the results what we have in this specific clinical study. So the next presentation is actually the continuity of my presentation. So my presentation was about the protocol of decellularization, and my colleague's presentation is about what result we can have when we are going to transplant this graft after the decellularization. So the topic is the critical size bone defects in vivo experimental method in the treatment with the decellularized vascularized bone allograft. So if you are starting with some definition about the massive bone defects, or how it's called in some literature, critical size defects, is the actual real dilemma for a constructive surgeon to the locomotor system. The critical size defect occur to the various factors like trauma, tumor resection, congenital, or infection. Modern methods like autogenic grafts, induced membrane, Irizarov method has prolonged treatment period, high level of morbidity and complication. When we speak specific of using this method in large bone defects, because all this method is work rate in small defects, small bone defects. So the vascularized bone allograft can be a successful alternative for treatment. The basic impediment of bone allograft is the immune response, what ultimately can lead to the rejection of the allograft. So decellularization of organs, including bones, give us a cellular biocompatible graft, keeping the extracellular 3D structure. So again, about the critical size defect, what in general this means. We have in the literature few definitions. This can be like defects where the length of the bone loss is 1.5 or 2 times more than diameters of the bone, or in adults we can call critical size defects where bone loss is more than 50% from the circumferential of the bone, or in general the situation where we can have like a normal healing of the bone. We can do some treatment, we can come with some new technologies. So our objective of the study is anatomical study on laboratory rabbits for the collection of bone grafts on the vascular pedicle. decellularization of bone grafts on vascular pedicle, and allotransplantation in vivo of the obtained extracellular matrix. So, anatomical study, we did this study on rabbits. So we researched the posterior, the back limb of the cadavers of the rabbits, injecting polymerized material into abdominal aorta with the subsequent preparation of the vessel. So this is how it looks our graft. To be sure about the vascularization, we did like angiography, so we can see the penetration of the substance of the contrast through all segment of the femoral bone. So this is how it looks our graft frozen at minus 80 degrees. About the protocol of decellularization, the same protocol what I have presented previous in my presentation, 9 steps, 1 week, and for us it was more comfortable to use like, I don't know, like a specific dispositive doing the decellularization of two grafts in the same period of time. Okay, so our study, to understand exactly if this graft is work or not in vivo experiment, we took 3 lots of the animals. First lot we make a defect and treat them. So for first lot we treat the defect with vascularized bone autograft. The second lot we treat the defect using the allograft, vascularized, non-decellularized bone, and the lot 3 we treat the defect using the decellularized, vascularized bone allograft. So we did the examination at day 1, 5, 10, and 15, analyzing the local post-operative manifestation, like we have or not rejection, immune rejection, and the post-operative paraclinical manifestation. All this data was statistically analyzed. So this is about the operative protocol. We use 2 approach, lateral approach, doing the defect. If you see here, we cut like a segment of the femoral bone, long like 2.5 centimeters long, and we treat in the same stages following the lots in different methods. So we choose lateral approach for the osteosynthesis for treatment, and we choose for the medial approach for the anastomosis, vascular anastomosis between the vascular pedicle of the decellularized graft and the femoral artery of the host. So this is the data what we get. Local postoperative manifestation is no so significant manifestation. The same result we get in the analyzing the function of the back limb in the postoperative. The same is no significant difference between all these three lots. The only the biggest difference what we get in the study was just between lot 1, 3, and 2. So in the lot 2, where we put to treat the defects using the allograft without the cellularization, we get like inflammatory reaction, and we get like in radiological examination we observe like non-union. So this specific part of the graft wasn't able to make a new I don't know how to make a consolidation, to make a new bone cells. So, like a conclusion, the intraoperative protocol has been established for 2 surgical approaches: the lateral, how I told, intermuscular approach for osteosynthesis of the graft, and the medial approach for the microsurgical anastomosis of the decellularized pedicle of the host circuit. The vascularized, decellularized bone allotransplantation included in the host vascular circuit process bone consolidation, with a satisfactorily significant difference between. So, like the last conclusion, it's good enough. We don't have such a high level of immune rejection, and in comparison with auto transplantation, we can make like we put the extracellular composite vascularized matrix to the same line. Okay, thank you for your attention. I hope I was able to.
Thank you for your presentation. If are some questions? If I understood well, you are a clinician.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you think that your experiment can be scaled up to the clinical studies?
Yeah, this is. I hope we'll have this opportunity to start maybe in our clinic to treat the patient who has a really big problem and high disability with due to different type of trauma, and they get large bone defects, and sometimes this type of defects can become even an indication to amputation. So we are really think maybe we'll have this opportunity to use this type of protocol to decellularize why not human allografts, and maybe to use them in our clinic for treating this type of patient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next presentation, a new approach in detection of biomarker 2-propanol with the PTFA coated titanium oxide nanostructured films. And the presenter is Stefan Schroeder.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me begin by wishing you all a very good day, and I want to present this work. This is a collaboration actually with a group of Oleg Lupan here from TU Moldova and our groups in Kiel from Rainer Adelung and Franz Vaupel. And I want to show you how we can influence the performance of metal oxide gas sensors. We heard a lot about metal oxide gas sensors in the last days, with an additional polymer coating on top, and we call this hybrid gas sensors. Since this is the section on biomedical application, I thought I would give a very brief introduction to this chemical vapor deposition, what we do. CVD or chemical vapor deposition is well known maybe from semiconductor industry to make microchips, all computers or smartphone. You all have some products made from CVD processes, but mostly CVD is known for inorganic materials, so semiconductors and so on. We are focusing on the combination of chemical vapor deposition with organic chemistry to make organic thin films, polymer thin film, very thin polymer films. Why are we interested in this? First of all, we got a very nice coverage also of complex geometries. We see here an SEM micrograph of a microelectronic trench, and you can see with spin coating. Maybe some of you know spin coating. It's a wet chemical approach with a solvent, and we have here meniscus formation, de-wetting effects, while the CVD, so the chemical vapor deposited film, has a very nice edge coverage here. And also we can, we can also deposit at very low deposition temperature, so at room temperature. This gives us the chance to coat temperature-sensitive substrates like paper. Here I have a hydrophobic coating on the paper. You can see after the coating, it's the water is not penetrating into the paper, and also it gives us the chance to make completely new materials like these gradient films. Okay, how is it working? Very briefly. It's always maybe can you okay. So we have two different approaches. The first one is called ICVD, or initiated chemical vapor deposition. This is where we insert our precursor gases into the hot filament CVD reactor, and here we get typically a chain growth polymerization with free radical polymerization to make the polymer thin film. And another technique we use is called OCVD, oxidative chemical vapor deposition. this is there's a step growth polymerization, and we get conductive films like PDOT or polyaniline. And maybe you are not familiar with these polymerizations, so I also want to briefly explain what this is. So this polymerization, we have different precursors, the so-called monomer and initiator, and these monomers absorb at the substrate stage, and the initiator is decomposed at this hot filament, which I just showed in the ICVD. Typically, we use for the monomer metacrylates or acrylates, so something with a Windel group. And for the initiator, we use mostly peroxides, with the peroxide bond, which is also very weak, in order to generate the free radicals, which then initiate the polymerization. This is why it's called initiated chemical vapor deposition, or ICVD, to make very good polymer thin films. And application examples, we are focused a lot also on the fundamentals to understand and improve the process, then making these new materials. And then we usually have also colleagues with whom we cooperate also in the field of biomedical applications, for example, or to modify the surface chemistry. Here we have an oil-water separation surface, so it's hydrophobic, it repels the water, and at the same time it takes up oil, so you can use it to clean contaminated water with, in the ocean if you have an oil spill, for example. Then also we work a lot on organic electronics, on soft conductors, as well as photo-switchable films, so they can change their color if they are, for example, exposed to UV light. Then also charge storage materials, so-called electrodes. And this is a topic for today, also on sensors. We have a lot of different sensors which we work on, and today I present the ones on the, sorry for that. We want to talk on the gas sensors, which we modify with an additional polymer film on top of the metal oxide gas sensors from our colleagues here in Moldova. And the idea or the motivation is that we want to use it for biomarker detection in the human breath. So every one of you, or we all breathe a lot in the minute. It depends on if we do sports, it's a bit more than compared to just when we just sit around. And we breathe in, of course, air. It's a mixture of different molecules, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on. And when we breathe out, there's also several other molecules inside due to the interaction with the body, and this can be so-called biomarkers. And looking at the concentration is relatively low compared to the other molecules. This is why we need very sensitive detectors. And let's look at one example. It's the 2-propanol or isopropanol. And there are several studies. They show if in the exhaled breath, if you find some isopropanol traces, so a trace for diabetes, lung cancer, or also liver diseases. And so it's important to detect this in order for the doctors later to see if the patient is ill. And then the question is how can we detect it? Typical way would be if you, I don't know, from chemistry, or you can use gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, but these are heavy devices. You need a lot of equipment, and it's not very portable. So we used these metal oxide gas sensors with our colleagues here from Moldova, and they are very nice because they are very small and can detect also very small concentrations. However, for these breath analysis, we have some requirements. So these are in the breath. There's a very high moisture. For example, also if we breathe in and out, and also it's difficult to tailor the selectivity of the sensors. For example, for isopropanol. And this is why we apply an additional ICVD deposited polymer thin film on the top of our substrate. And in this way we can address these challenges. So let's look at this into more detail. So first thing I mentioned was this operation in high humidity. So the problem with the state-of-the-art gas sensors is that they show usually not a good performance in high humidity levels. You can see this here. This is the response of the sensor to ethanol in this case, and at a low relative humidity here around 20%, it shows very nice performance. However, as the humidity increases to 65%, the response is significantly lower, and they don't really work at high temperatures, at high humidity levels. So our solution to this was then to deposit a hydrophobic thin film via this ICVD process. A very thin film, which hydrophobic means it's water repellent, so it will not let go the water similar like if you have a frying pan or so. There's also this PTFE coatings. And first we must check, is it stable at high temperature, because the sensors are typically operated at very high temperatures, and we found out these polymers, or the one we use, are quite stable also in a high temperature, up to 350 degrees. This is perfect for the sensors, so we can also operate the sensors at higher temperatures. And the second is, of course, okay, can we now prevent the moisture from reaching the surface? And here you can see now a metal oxide gas sensor coated with an additional polymer film, and at 20% humidity as well as 65%. Now the humidity doesn't matter. We can also measure now in higher humidity levels, which is a very nice improvement to the sensors. And now the idea in this study, which we submitted here for this conference, we use this PTFE films. We grew it with ICVD again. It's a very thin 25 nanometer film, and we use hexafluoropropylene oxide as a precursor, and it decomposes. You have a pyrolysis and in the reactor, and you get this difluorocarbene and the trifluoroacetylfluoride byproduct. The difluorocarbene then reacts to form these long CF2 chains for PTFE. And we made this 25 nanometer film. In the FTIR it looked very nice. So we have these stretches, asymmetric and symmetric stretch for the CF, as well as the characteristic rocking. And we have a very good film formation, and due to the CVD typical film deposition, we can also coat the surface of the sensor. This is a SEM micrograph of the nanostructure, which you see it's very complex, and we need something to get a conformal coating. So the first challenge, measuring in high humidity with a hydrophobic coating made by ICVD is solved. And now let's go to the second point, which is the detection of this volatile organic compound, so tuning the selectivity of the gas sensor in order to for example, then detect this isopropanol. So what can we do here? And usually here we applied first principle calculation for the repeating units and the molecules. We look at for example, electrostatic interaction, what happens with the polymer, and so on. And also we use geometry optimizations or free volume calculations based on force field approaches. I will not go into detail here because there's not enough time. We use our computer to design the material, which then in the end has the properties we want to have in the approach. And now for the PTFE, this is now a copper and titanium dioxide metal oxide gas sensor, and we coated this with a PTFE thin film via ICVD, and you can see the selectivity here. This gray box is very nice for hydrogen, so it has very high selectivity, and the concentration was also very low, on 100 parts per million. And so this one was working with the titanium dioxide and copper oxide gas sensor, and we also tested it with another gas sensor. And here we have just titanium dioxide, and we applied a 25 nanometer thin film. And also here we were successfully increase the selectivity for the 2-propanol here in order to detect this then later in the human breath as a biomarker. this is the dynamic response. So we see also it works for repeating cycles. The response times were very nice. They show very good stability during the performance. And so now this next point, detection of volatile organic compounds. In this example, the 2-propanol or isopropanol, we were also succeeded. And yeah, this brings me then to the conclusion of the talk. So I hope I can convince you that this ICVD approach is a very nice solvent-free technique to apply high-quality polymer thin films on complex geometry or any kind of substrate. I think the only substrate we have not coated yet are radioactive materials. Everything else we have coated so far. And especially in this study, we had this ultra-thin ICVD film on the metal oxide gas sensors. We call it then these hybrid sensors because they are inorganic, organic, and we can see we saw that this enhances the selectivity and performance in high humidity. Application I showed already in the beginning for biomarker detection in breath analysis, and there are also many other applications. And then we have a nice connection between this nanotechnology, nano thin films, and biomedical applications. And yeah, I want to thank the team, the chair for multi-component material, Franz Vaupel, especially on all the PhD students also working in our group, and our lab engineer, and Thomas, and Klaus, Alex. And I like to thank also the funding for DFG, and in the end also the organizers for making this very nice conference here. It's my first time in Moldova, and I really enjoyed it. And in the end, I want to thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Questions? Please. Yes, please.
Thank you, Stefan, for a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about the thickness of the layer with this method. So you showed here the 25 nanometers, right?
Yes.
So can you make it thinner, like below 10 nanometers, or it's the limitation of the molecule of the polymer?
Yes, at some point we come in the range where this molecular layer or MLD approaches are more better, but usually I always give the range from, let's say, 10 nanometer to 10 micrometer, but might be possible to go also 9 or maybe even 8 nanometer, but this is, at some point you're at the limit.
So you can go up to 10 micrometers?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. And the second question is related to the sensors you showed.
Yeah.
What about the electrical contacts? Are they behind this layer of polymer, or they are on top of it? And if you try this, like passivation only of contacts, and to analyze the effect of the metal oxide sensor itself when you have covered contacts?
Yes, that's a very good question. I did not show this in the presentation. So we have the sensor, and when we do the coating with the ICVD, we coat everything. So we also coat the electronic, the electrodes on top, and we have to remove the polymer film mechanically, and then we can make the contact, and so on these electrodes.
Okay, so you have the electrodes exposed to the gas as well when you do measurements?
Yes, yeah, we coat the whole sensor. We can put it inside, and the substrate temperature is at room temperature, so it will not degrade, and we can coat also very sensitive substrates, and you can also put some Kapton tape on top of it and then remove it afterwards, but this all survives the coating process. It's very, I showed this in the beginning. I also coated like paper, and it did not, was not destroyed, and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Spuneți, vă rog, titanul 2 este depus pe pelliculă?
The question is if titanium oxide is on the film or on the top or
Yeah.
Care sunt caracteristicile de absorție și structură a dioxidului de titan nanostructural?
and the characteristics of your titanium oxide film.
Yes. So yes,
Yes, I will.
we showed these two examples. We have the one with the one is with titanium dioxide on the bottom, covered with copper oxide, and the other sensor is pure titanium dioxide. For the first question, but maybe, yeah.
Au testat două tipuri de senzori, unul cu dioxid de titan și cel de-al doilea cu un strat de oxid de cupru deasupra.
Interesant, это мărimea, suprafața specifică a dioxidului de titan. Care este în cazul ăsta?
Specific surface of titanium oxide, with how the values for
How we characterize it?
yes.
Yeah, we use mainly XRD and XPS, so X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy.
And the surface, the area,
And with SEM, scanning electron microscope, to see the topography, and this we can then code with the polymer film.
and you have surface, a number for the surface used for your experiment.
To the size of the
Yes.
I think it's approximately 300 millimeter times 100 millimeter, but then there are also the electrodes on top, so the effective area is a bit smaller. But I don't know the exact. They are provided by Professor Lupan, so I don't know the exact.
300 mm pe 100, aproximativ.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was like a clinician. Can we expect for the future, like we'll be able to do the diagnosis of different disease, just use the analysis of the,
Yeah. So we just started, but I think it's much cheaper than having a big gas chromatography or mass spectrometry, and it's working. So
Great.
yeah, we also So why not? The next step would then that we have different coating for different selectivities, depends on what kind of sensor you need. And next step would also maybe to work together with a real life application with the materials here. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think are two papers which were not presented. Is someone here who didn't present the paper from the morning section? No? Then we can go for the next presentation from where we have to wait. We have to If you are agree, we can move to presentation from the period after coffee break, or if we have to, yes, have to present us. Yeah. If you are agree, or if you want to come back after 10:30. Is there anyone from the next part who want to present now? After coffee break, okay. Hello again. We will start the session with the first presentation. Effect of gold nanoparticles functionalized by Arthrospira plantensis on rats. And the presenter is Liliana Cepoi.
Thank you. The nanotechnology has been proven one of the most dynamic fields of science. Nanomaterials are increasingly common in human life, while nanoparticles with unique properties has perfected many sectors of production, consumption, and medicine, where we are used for imaging and drug administration. Gold nanoparticles are among the most accessible nanomaterial produced on an industrial scale for various fields of application, including cancer treatment. Due to selective targeting, gold nanoparticle can improve the efficiency and minimize the side effect of chemotherapy. It is known that the property of nanoparticles determine their biodistribution in organs and tissues. Those nanoparticles with smaller size are more actively accumulated in multiple organs and tissues. Directed coating of nanoparticles with various chemical and biological ligands, a process called functionalization or biofunctionalization, allows their stabilization and changes their properties and toxicological profiles. Through nanoparticles functionalization, the clearance times can be changed, or a specific tropism toward certain organs can be obtained. Biofunctionalization of gold nanoparticle using different biological extracts is associated with changes of the properties of cellular metabolites and in the extract, and the subsequent use of nanoparticles require their purification. Biofunctionalization of nanoparticle by living cell, for example by cyanobacteria, can prevent the formation of the formation of toxic metabolites, and the nanoparticle can be used together with bioactive components of microbial biomass. It was demonstrated that Cyanobacteria acrospira platensis, known as spirulina, can serve as a basis for nanoparticle biofunctionalization and for biosynthesis of silver gold nanoparticles starting of different type of ions, and the same for biofunctionalization of engineered nanoparticles. At the same time, the biomass of spirulina itself has characterized by numerous beneficial effects of human body due to its rich and balanced biochemical content. The spirulina biomass enriched with nanoparticles can be considered effective complex for different therapeutical purposes. In our previous research, it was demonstrated that silver nanoparticles biofunctionalized with living spirulina cells were accumulated and eliminated from the rat organs differently compared to unmodified nanoparticles. The use of biofunctionalized nanoparticle together with the matrix which was used for the biofunctionalization can provide additional benefits for medicine. The objective of our research was to biofunctionalize engineered gold nanoparticle with spirulina living cells to estimate the accumulation in organs of rat and excretion of unmodified gold nanoparticle versus those functionalized with spirulina, and to assess the changes in the biochemical and hematological parameters of the rat blood under the influence of nanoparticles. Engineered nanoparticles were used in the experiment for biofunctionalization. Gold nanoparticles were mainly spherical and formed a small agglomeration. The size of the nanoparticle ranges from 3 to 15 nanometers. The nanoparticles were incubated with the spirulina culture during one cultivation cycle. After this, the biomass was collected by filtration, washed and analyzed. The accumulation and biofunctionalization of the nanoparticles by spirulina were confirmed by several techniques. Applying neutron activation analysis, the content of gold in biomass was assessed. while SEM-TEM and DAX technique allow the visualization and identification of the nanoparticle in the matrix. The experiment with animal were performed in the laboratory of stress physiology and adaptation. The experiment consisted of 2 parts, 28 days of administration of the preparation and a 28-day clearance period. 4 groups of animals were formed. The animal from the 3rd and 4th group received the nanoparticles, 2 types of nanoparticles. The amount of gold administered to animal was 1 microgram per animal per day. The second group of positive control received spirulina biomass. The nanoparticle and spirulina were incorporated into breadcrumbs offered as first meal for the animals. Animals in negative group received only breadcrumbs. In our experiment, essential difference in the accumulation of unmodified nanoparticle and biofunctionalized nanoparticle were identified. In brain, spleen, liver, and kidney were accumulated in higher amount functionalized nanoparticle compared to unmodified ones. Brain tissue accumulates small amount of nanoparticle in both experimental variants. However, accumulation of functionalized nanoparticle was 20% higher compared to unmodified gold nanoparticles. After 28 days of clearance, the brain tissue was completely cleared of accumulated gold in both experimental variants. Although it is considered that nanoparticles should not cross blood-brain barrier, their accumulation in the brain in small amount and their rapid elimination have been reported by in many researchers published in the last years. In present study, functionalized nanoparticles show higher affinity for brain tissue compared to unmodified one. This specificity after in-deep study can serve as a basis for the development of targeted drugs. There are limited information demonstrating reliable changes in hematological parameters in animals that were administered with gold nanoparticles. Some authors confirm the total lack of hematological changes. Other studies, including present one, identified several changes, statistical changes in value of the hematological parameters, some of which, for example, white blood cell and lymphocytes, even then beyond the normal range for the rat. Regarding the biochemical markers, the modification of the specific indices of the liver and kidney system, which have been subjected to an intensive process of accumulation and elimination of gold nanoparticle, is expected. An increase in alanine aminotransferase value was found in rats administered with gold unmodified gold nanoparticle. Another parameters, glucose level, also was higher after administration of gold nanoparticle. The main part of hematological indicators as a result of nanoparticle administration after the clearance period returned to value normal for rats. However, a serious exception was detected, namely the increase in the number of eosinophils after the clearance period, which indicated a delayed effect in the time. Glucose level was higher not only after the administration of nanoparticle, but continued to increase even more after the clearance period. It can be assumed an impact on the pancreas of rats that received unmodified nanoparticle, but especially biofunctionalized nanoparticles. And finally, our conclusion are both type of gold nanoparticle, unmodified and biofunctionalized, were accumulated in the brain, spleen, liver, kidney, and testes. And only the biofunctionalized nanoparticle were accumulated in the ovaries. Accumulation of biofunctionalized nanoparticle in the brain, kidney, spleen, liver, and ovaries was higher compared to unmodified nanoparticles. After 28-day period of clearance from the brain, the entire amount of accumulated gold was eliminated, regardless of the type of nanoparticle that were administered to animals. So both biofunctionalized and unmodified nanoparticles possess high biological activity. Inclusive, they can develop long-lasting or delayed effects in time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions? Please.
A very interesting talk. Thank you for the talk. I would like to ask you, because I'm sorry, but I missed the purpose of the aim of the study. Why did you functionalize this spirulina, the gold nanoparticle? What is the aim of this biofunctionalization?
Why with spirulina? Because our aim was to use not only the nanoparticle, functionalized nanoparticle, but use the properties of spirulina biomass is very effective in different disorders in human organisms, so they have an immunomodulatory effect.
Agent?
As a therapeutical agent, added to the effect of gold nanoparticles.
And the second question, if you allow me, how many animals do you had on each group?
Each group consists of 12 animals, 6 males and 6 females. And the result was divided for the sex, but because of the lack of time, I presented only the main results and my conclusion.
Thank you. Other question? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. The next presentation, synthesis and characterization of self-assembled hydrogels based on amphiphilic derivative of chitosan and gelatin. And the presenter is Vera Volan.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vera Volan. I am a lecturer at the Faculty of Medical Bioengineering from University of Pharmacy and Medicine from Iași. And today I will present you some results regarding the synthesis of self-assembled hydrogels based on amphiphilic derivatives of chitosan and gelatin. First, I would like to say a few words about the aim of this paper. Self-assembled hydrogels based on amphiphilic derivatives obtained through a non-covalent interaction without using a chemical reactant is biocompatible, and they are allowing the cells to live within them. That's why we try to develop these self-assembled hydrogels. First, we need to isolate the biopolymers, namely chitosan and gelatin. And after that, we have obtained this self-assembled hydrogels basing on their ability to self-assembly only by adding them in cell culture medium. We have confirmed the composition of the self-assembled hydrogel using FTIR spectroscopy. After that, we have evaluated the swelling characteristic and their elastic modulus. And we have concluded with the in vitro cell viability study and the respectively cell morphology evaluation. It is known that chitosan can self-assembly, but it will not form hydrogels at 3D matrix. It will form like shape without a regular form. That's why first we have acylated the chitosan using the acylation reaction with palmitoyl chloride. We have obtained this derivative, palmitoyl chloride, palmitoyl chitosan, sorry. And afterwards we have used also palmitoyl gelatin. Why palmitoyl gelatin? Because only palmitoyl chitosan, it is not enough to stimulate the cell adherence inside the spheres. That's why we have added also palmitoyl gelatin. We have used the chitosan by high molecular weight with a degree of deacetylation 85% and gelatin from porcine skin with a molecular weight of 100 kilodalton. The beads we have obtained are represented here. They are spherical in shape. They were formed easily only by mixing the two biopolymers. We have used a different ratio from those biopolymers. We have obtained a mixture of solution and we have added with a syringe in the cell culture medium and using this self-assembled mechanism that is based on the non-covalent reaction, especially hydrophobic interaction between the palmitoyl group from palmitoyl gelatin and respectively palmitoyl chitosan, we have obtained these spherical beads. This is their shape after the synthesis. After freeze dryings, the hydrogens were stable, and here in this image we can observe the microscopy image of the surface of the hydrogens and respective the cross section of the hydrogens, and it can be seen that the hydrogens present a porous structure. Using FTIR spectroscopy, we wanted to confirm the composition of the hydrogels. So, we have obtained hydrogels only from palmitoyl chitosan, hydrogels that combine palmitoyl chitosan with palmitoyl gelatin, and also we have obtained hydrogels from chitosan with palmitoyl gelatin. It is important to mention that we haven't obtain hydrogels only from chitosan and also exclusively from palmitoyl gelatin. The FTIR spectroscopy confirmed the composition based on the fact that all hydrogels exhibit in their FTIR spectra the bands for hydroxyl group, the bands for methylene group from palmitoyl groups, the bands for amide 1, and respectively the bands for amino groups. These are specifically for both polymers we have used in our synthesis. And we have used the ratio between both biopolymers by 70 to 30 ratio volume per volume. Regarding the swelling characteristic, the swelling degree is a parameter that evaluates the interaction of the hydrogels with the biological fluids, and we observed after the experiments that our hydrogels exhibit a swelling degree of around 700, respectively 600 and 800% for all three hydrogels that we have obtained. It is important to mention that adding the palmitoyl gelatin within the structure was indicated a less swelling degree, because we believe that this palmitoyl gelatin tightened the structure and more hydrophobic interactions are there. Concerning the elastic modulus, or the Young modulus, we have obtained values by approximative 4,000 for each hydrogens, Newton per millimeter, sorry. And these values of elastic modulus are suitable for hydrogels manipulation and also for their application in the soft tissue engineering. Regarding the cell viability, we have performed this study using fibroblast. We have used MTTSA for evaluate the cell viability by putting in direct contact the hydrogels with the fibroblast. We have observed that after 72 hours, the cell viability of the fibroblast is above 80% and even above 90% for hydrogels based on chitosan and palmitoyl gelatin. And these results indicate the cytocompatibility of the hydrogels. That means the hydrogels can weave and divide within the structure. The second step of the cell evaluation was based on cell morphology. We have used two staining, May Greenwald, Jimsa, and respectively calcein staining for analyze the morphology of the cells after the contact with hydrogels. We have observed that there are no morphology difference between the control cells that have not been put together with the hydrogels and respectively the cells that were put in direct contact with the fibroblast. In the same time, the calcium staining confirmed this, the fact that there are no difference between the morphology of the cells between control and respectively the cells evaluated together with the hydrogels. So to conclude, until now we have obtained spherical hydrogels that are based on amphiphilic derivatives of chitosan and respectively gelatin without using any chemical reaction, only the self-assembly of these biopolymers. It is an easy method to obtain hydrogels. Hydrogels are stable, they swell, but also they maintain their integrity. Using FTIR, we have validated the composition of these hydrogels. The hydrogels exhibited a moderate swelling degree based on the fact that they contain in the structure a palmitoyl group that is hydrophobic, and that's why a moderate swelling degree, but they exhibit an adequate Young modulus. The first test, in vitro cell viability, validated that the hydrogels are cytocompatible, and we want to expand our experiments and continue with obtaining these hydrogels in the presence of the cells, because our goal is to use these hydrogels as suitable matrix for 3D cell culturing application. We'd like to thank for the financial support to this project. Also, I would like to thank my collaborators and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions?
Yes, please.
Do you need specific conditions for creation of a hydrogel, for example, pH or temperature?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
In order to fabricate the hydrogel and mix with polymers, you need a specific condition like a pH or solution?
Yes, for the palmitoyl chitosan, you need to adjust the pH first at the value 6, because palmitoyl chitosan is soluble only in acidic medium. Therefore, first we prepare the solution, we adjust the pH to value 6, and afterwards we combine with palmitoyl gelatin that is soluble in water without problem. We don't need another solvent. And we combine the mixture and we prototype the mixture in the cell culture to obtain these hydrogels. Okay, thank you for the questions.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you again for your presentation.
Our next speaker is Professor Liliana Bereșciuc from Romania. The title of the presentation is Composites based on biopolymers and silver nanoparticles as potential wound dressing materials. Please.
Thank you everybody to be here with me and to see my talk and maybe to have some discussions about some composites based on biopolymers and the silver nanoparticles, which are intended to be used as wound dressing materials. I'm from research center in tissue engineering from University of Medicine and Pharmacy of Iași, Faculty of Medical Bioengineering. We have facility which are involve preparation of nanomaterials, scaffolding biomaterials, and facilities for cell culturing, and we are inviting you for new collaborations in our group. And for today we present some of our work which are regarding about scaffolding materials using nanoparticles and polymers, and the application which is proposed is as wound dressing material. I will start with some introduction, some information about our experimental part, result and discussions, and of course some conclusions. Of course, all of us know that skin is an organ which are protecting us for different type of threats, like trauma, like different radiations, like microbial medium, temperature, or other external factors. But because of this, the skin is can be very easy infected, and most often when the skin is burnt. For the burnt tissues, like skin, depending on the grade of the tissue damaged, we have different approach, like pharmacological agents, like wound dressing materials or skin substitute. Each of this approach has some drawbacks, like side effects when we are using pharmacological agents and we are using systemic administration, sometimes some allergies or some toxical effect depending on the concentration of the drug. About wound dressing materials, we are faced with the pain for the patient when the materials is applied on different wounded tissue. Also some risk of infections, and sometimes some hydration problems when material has to be used in managing the burn patient. Skin substitute is already solution for very large defects when before mentioned the solutions are not possible. So for even we are discussing about wound dressing solutions or skin substitute, we need some scaffolds based on different kind of materials, which has to be has to protect the wound medium, and the scaffold has to be biocompatible, to have a very clear morphology, to be when it's in contact with the cell in wound healing or with the wound healing medium. Also to have a biodegradability in the controlled manner, to have biodhesive properties, but not very, not like glue, but also to stay on the wound. And also when we are discussing to add some drugs in such scaffold, the drug have to be delivered in a controlled manner. The scaffolds can be obtained by different materials, from collagenic materials, other type of polymers like hyaluronic acid, chitosan, gelatin, xanthan are a lot of natural polymers because people are thinking that we are using natural polymers which are based on the living tissue. The biocompatibility is very good and it is true, but also some synthetic materials and sometimes some composites. Based on all these facts, scientists are thinking to do more than scaffolds and put together properties from different kind of materials. And silver nanoparticle are known as antimicrobial component, and some scientists try to obtain different type of nanoparticles based on silver in different conditions. We try to do it in green methods and to use some materials from natural origin, and after that to put these nanoparticles in scaffolds, and we try to compare scaffolds as films and also as porous structures. We decided to use two types of polymers, and the polymers were gelatin and xanthan, because gelatin will assure good biocompatibility, and xanthan is a polymer which have very good properties, mechanical properties, and together we think that can be a solution. Another one problem was to bind together the polymers, so we decided to modify both polymers, and we did the methacrylation of the gelatin and the xanthan, because together and using polymerization condition, we can bind better the polymers together, and inside to keep the nanoparticles. The first step was to prepare the nanoparticles. The nanoparticles were prepared in natural extract from olive leaves, and the extracts were obtained by cutting the olive leaves and boiling in a very clear condition and in good condition of purification. And the nanoparticles were obtained putting together silver nitrate with olive leaves, and only silver nanoparticle olive leaves, or silver nitrate with extract, or silver nitrate glucose and extract. And after that we modify the pH until pH 7 under very good stirring system, and for 30 minutes, and after that 24 hours to finish the reaction. And the particles were separated by centrifugation and were purified by washing them with distilled water. We can see here the obtaining of silver nanoparticles. The second part was to characterize nanoparticles from a dimensional point of view, and we determine the hydrodynamic particle diameter and the zeta potential. We can observe that depending on the condition of synthesis, we have particles with dimension between 90 and 105 nanometers, and the zeta potential and the negative zeta potential because of the composition of the extract, because we have there flavonoids, some acids which are responsible for the value of the zeta potential. If we are drying the nanoparticle suspension, we can observe that during the drying process, the nanoparticle has the tendencies to agglomerate and to obtain some cluster system. That is important because it's an indication what will happen when we will do the scaffolds. Another one characterization was to analyze nanoparticles in enhanced dark field hyperspectral microscopy, which analyze the nanoparticles in their medium, and we can observe some clustering processes, but not very high level. This means we have to be very careful when we are maintain the nanoparticles on longer time to maintain their stability. Because in nanoparticles are some components which are based in olive leaves, which are known as that have antioxidant property. We measure the antioxidant properties of the nanoparticles, and we use the DPPH methods, which is a colorimetric methods which measure the capacity of the particles or different components to reduce the DPPH activity, and we can observe that our nanoparticle have an antioxidant keeps the antioxidant activity of the DPPH until 65%, means it's a very good antioxidant activity. So it's an input for our research that our materials can have not only antibacterial activity but also the antioxidant property. The second part of the study was to obtain scaffolds, and we obtained films by mixing the polymers and adding under very strong styrene the nanoparticles, and after that we dry the mixture. And the porous structures, because in the porous structures we used modified polymer, we had to add some initiators, and we use ammonium persulfate, and because of that, after scaffolds preparation, we wash it very carefully, the hydrogels obtained, because we had to remove the unwanted components. The cross-linking process was realized at 365 nanometers for 1 hour, and after that the materials were purified and finally were freeze-dried in order to obtain porous structures. We characterized the nanoparticles from spectral point of view to observe if we have in their structured components from the initial mixture, and also the scaffolds, and we can see here we have some some bands, some peaks which are attributed to gelatin, some peaks which are attributed to xanthan, and also peaks which are attributed to the methacrylate part in our material. Next step was to analyze from a morphological point of view. We have in the first 3 images the films which are obtained by drying, and also scaffolds obtained by freeze drying, and we try to analyze different scaffolds and different concentrations of nanoparticles in our materials, we have seen few studies that we have to be very careful about the concentration of nanoparticles in wound dressing materials because of their toxicity in long-term applications. So we try to reduce the concentration of nanoparticles to have the good enough properties, but also to not have some toxic effect in the human body. We can see that depending on the concentration of the nanoparticles, the polar structures is different. We can see here different concentration of nanoparticles, and at higher concentration of nanoparticles, some clustering effect is present in the scaffold. The swelling properties is important not for wound dressing materials, because wound dressing materials you have to maintain in swelling, in a swelled way, or you can use as dry materials and to swell when you need it. I think the second part is the best because the stability of the materials is better, and you don't lose some properties when you are preparing a hydrogel and keep the hydrogel for long terms. So we can observe that the swelling is very fast. That is very important because the materials can be used before put on the wound tissue, and the stability of the swelling is obtained in about 30 minutes. Also, both the concentration of nanoparticles influence the swelling properties, and we can see when we are using higher concentration of nanoparticles, the swelling properties is modifying, is diminished. Another one properties which was analyzed was the adhesion properties. We used the texture analyzer with the modulus for bioadhesion test, and the method means to have a device where we are adding the tissues or some membranes which simulate different or wound medium, and materials is attached on this cylinder, and we put together, put in contact the material with the medium, and after that we have to remove the cylinders, and depending on the adhesion properties, the force necessary to remove the cylinders increase. Of course, the adhesion of such materials don't have to be extremely strong, because extremely strong adhesion means pain for the patient. So the adhesion properties has to be in some ranges, and we obtained some work of adhesion with were good enough for such kind of application. Another one test was to measure the cytocompatibility of the scaffolds, and we can observe that we try to measure only the higher concentration of nanoparticle. It's true when we use higher concentration of nanoparticles, the cell viability decrease, but not less than 80%, and is considering that cytocompatibility as cytocompatible materials. And also we analyze the morphology of the cell when we're in contact with our materials. We can observe by two types of tests, calcium AM staining, and also staining with GEMSA on fixed cell culture, we can observe that are not very high differences between control and our materials with nanoparticles and without nanoparticles. In conclusion, our aim to obtain nanoparticles in green conditions were conducted to materials which good properties as nanomaterials for wound dressing inclusion, and comparing the films and porous scaffold, we think that porous scaffolds is more appropriate for such application, and we will try to do further experiments in vivo in order to demonstrate the good properties of our materials. Thank you for your kind attention, and I'd like to invite you to our conference, which is organized by our faculty this year in Bucharest, but you can apply for with your abstract and paper until 1st of October. Is a conference with which is ICI indexed, and also the best papers, few or more or less paper depending on their number, are published by censors and other few journals which are in collaboration with us for this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation and for your invitation. The question, please. Please.
Thank you. I would like to ask about the cellular nanoparticle structure. You showed me one slide that they have something like shell core structure. Yeah? It's a shell core structure.
Yes, it's a shell core structures because the components from oligonucleotides are coming on the top of the nanoparticle.
Do you know which component do you have in this shell structure?
There are different components. We are now trying to test which components from oligonucleotides are there, because are some flavonoids, but are some acids which are possible to be, and we are not satisfied only with FTIR analysis for such very specific characterization. Some aspect regarding antioxidant properties is an indication of kind of components, antioxidant components from oligonucleotides, but we need more experiments to tell very clear how much from each component is on the nanoparticle.
Actually, I work with this type of nanoparticles also, and I have the same problem.
We will solve together.
That's correct.
Thank you. Yes.
You studied the nanoparticles which you check design.
Yes, we did some. We didn't present it here, but we kept the nanoparticle until 6 months, and we didn't use a low temperature, because even we did some. We use some biological materials from oligonucleotides, and they are small changes, and is depending about condition of reaction. The nanoparticles obtaining at 40 degrees were the best, and they were maintained for 6 months without changing, we neglected changes in their stability.
I'm just asking because I saw the data protection is limited by biology rate for married time. And my question is, what procedure do you use for the hydrogel purification? Dialysis or something else, just washing steps? For
So
the purification of the hydrogel?
the purification of the hydrogels, we wash the hydrogels more and more times, at least 5 days, changing each day twice the medium. And here is depending what you want to do, because we use only purified pure water. But if we want to change something in hydrogel, we can use in the final purification part differently.
Are there any other questions? No? Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next presentation is about effect of nickel, molybdenum and cobalt nanoparticles in photosynthesis pigment content in cyanobacter
Spirulatensis,
yes.
known as spirulina. Nanoparticles of different type, size and origin have become indispensable in numerous fields. In biotechnology of cyanobacteria and microalgae, the exploration of nanoparticles started from the factors underlying their toxicity, which over years expanded to study the possibility of applying nanoparticles as stimulators for promoting the biosynthetic activity of microalgae culture. In nutrient media, nanoparticles complete for the uptake of nutrients, stimulate the rapid consumption and reorganization of biosynthetic processes in cells. All the stimulatory effects of microalgae culture are associated with low concentration of nanoparticles. So those nanoparticles can be used in microalgae and cyanobacteria cultivation technology to increase productivity and accumulation of nutraceutical compounds with beneficial effects on health, as well as to increase the production of important lipids for fuel production. Cyanobacteria Arthrospira platensis is a well-known source of biologically active substances, including photosynthetic pigments such as chlorophyll, beta-carotene, and phycobiliproteins. These pigments can be used as natural dyes and antioxidants in food industry, cosmetology, as well as valuable nutraceuticals in the composition of pharmaceutical supplements. Phycobiliproteins are applied also in diagnostic imaging as they are highly fluorescent compounds. Nanoparticles of cobalt, molybdenum and nickel have gained significant attention in various fields, particularly in the medicine. Cobalt nanoparticles are being researched for their potential use in the targeted drugs delivery systems. Their small size allows to localize exactly the nanoparticle and minimizing the side effects. Molybdenum nanoparticles show promise in medical imaging due to their excellent contrast properties. They enhance the visibility of tissue and can aid in early disease detection. Nickel nanoparticles are under investigation for their antimicrobial properties, making them valuable in combating drug-resistant bacteria in medical settings. In the same time, cobalt, molybdenum and nickel are vital for growth, metabolism, physiological and protective function of microalgae and cyanobacteria. Nanoparticles of this metal can also be utilized for targeted synthesis and the accumulation of compounds of interest in phycological objects, including Cyanobacterium arthrospira platensis. The research aimed to study the effect of nickel, molybdenum, and cobalt nanoparticles stabilized in polyethylene glycol on the chlorophyll, beta-carotene, and phycobiliproteins contained in Arthrospira platensis. The different concentration of three types of nanoparticles were incubated with spirulina during one cultivation cycle. After this, the biomass was collected by filtration, washed, and analyzed. Only two concentrations, the highest ones of nickel nanoparticle, result in the reduction of chlorophyll content in spirulina biomass, while molybdenum and cobalt nanoparticle reduce the parameter to all applied concentration. The decrease of chlorophyll content can reach up to 70% compared to control. The correlation between the content of chlorophyll in biomass and the concentration of the nanoparticles in the culture medium was negative and very strong. The Pearson correlation coefficients calculated for the relationship between the these two variables were 0.8 for cobalt nanoparticle and 0.9 for molybdenum nanoparticles. Nickel nanoparticle boost beta-carotene production in spirulina at concentration between 0.2 to 2 microgram per liter. At 0.5 milligram per liter, nickel nanoparticle concentration lead to 25% increase, while 2 milligrams per liter result in 50% increase. Molybdenum and cobalt nanoparticle, on the other hand, reduce beta-carotene synthesis. Concentration between 0.2 and 1 milligram per liter of molybdenum and cobalt lead to up to 20% decrease, and concentration between 2 and 20.5 milligram per liter caused 50% drop compared to control. The inhibitory effect of cobalt and molybdenum nanoparticle was confirmed by the correlation coefficient between the concentration of molybdenum nanoparticle and the cobalt nanoparticle and beta-carotene content. The correlation coefficient was 0.92 and 0.98 respectively, suggesting a very strong negative correlation between these two parameters. The inhibitory effect of the synthesis of photosynthetic pigments was caused as a result of oxidative stress induced by the presence of nanoparticle in the culture medium. The response of the adaptation of spirulina culture to the consequence of oxidative stress that affect the photosynthetic system was confirmed by changes in the content of phycobiliproteins in biomass. Phycobiliproteins act as antennae of photosynthetic apparatus that efficiently capture light energy and transfer it to chlorophyll during photosynthesis. Cyanobacterium arthrospira platensis contain two main phycobiliproteins, phycocyanin, which is the primary pigment, and allophycocyanin. Both play the role of light harvesting pigments and antioxidants, cell protectors. It is possible that the reduction of chlorophyll in spirulina biomass has been mitigated by an increase in the content of phycobiliproteins, resulting in efficient capture and transfer of light energy. Molybdenum nanoparticles provide to be the most efficient in stimulating the synthesis of phycobiliproteins. The result was influenced by molybdenum, which is the main constituent of several enzymes involved in the process of synthesis of proteins. Elevated level of phycobiliproteins have also been determined in experimental variants with the application of cobalt nanoparticles. It can be assumed that the decrease in the content of chlorophyll and beta-carotene in cyanobacterial cells disrupted the activity of photosynthetic system, and in order to maintain cell viability, the biosynthetic activity was reoriented toward the synthesis of phycobiliproteins as auxiliary pigments. This assumption is valid if we admit that the nanoparticle can function as trace element, while molybdenum and cobalt can be part of specific enzymes. Among phycobiliproteins determined in the biomass using cobalt and the molybdenum nanoparticle, allophycocyanin turned out to be the component with the highest value. Allophycocyanin increased the range of the spectrum available for light capture and assure photosynthetic under condition on insufficient chlorophyll production. Under the action of nickel nanoparticles, the content of phycobiliprotein in biomass had a decreasing tendency, with an increase in the concentration of nanoparticle in culture medium. In these variants, no changes in the content of chlorophyll were found, and as a result, the functioning of photosynthetic apparatus was disrupted. In this case, we can assume that biosynthetic activity of culture was oriented toward the synthesis of beta-carotene, and it used as an antioxidant in the cells. In conclusion, the type of nanoparticles determines how spirulina culture copes with them and supports the biosynthetic activity that manifested in the elevated level of antioxidant and auxiliary photosynthetic pigments. Molybdenum and cobalt nanoparticles can be used in the cultivation technology of cyanobacteria Artospira platensis to stimulate the phycobiliprotein synthesis and their accumulation in the biomass. The stimulatory effect of these nanoparticles depends on their concentration in the culture medium. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Questions? If not, thank you again for your presentation. And I think we have another one presentation. Is the author here, nanocomposite films? Is not here. Asta nu se mai susține. Nu cred că este. Thank you again for all speakers, and thank you to the audience for the presence. We will close this section, and please see other papers in adjacent sections.